Hi, this is Paul Kimble. I'm the bass player, producer, and megalomaniac in Grantley, Buffalo.
Hi, this is Joey from Grantley, Buffalo. I'm the drummer in the band.
Hi, I'm Grant Phillips, and I write songs, and I sing songs, and I play the guitar in those songs. I guess I'm a happily confused person. Joey Peters gets paid for throwing tantrums. I mean, he's a drummer. Paul Kimble is a bass guitar's worst enemy.
A brief history of Grantley, Buffalo is that the band began about 1990, really. Paul and Grant and I, that was probably the first year we started playing together as Grantley, Buffalo.
And we practiced a lot, and we recorded a lot, and then we got signed, and now we're here.
I see the various things that I do in this band as being one role. I've been writing songs for as long as I can remember, and as long as I can remember, I've been the only one around to sing those songs. And I'm the only one who can put my fingers on the neck of the guitar like that, you know. So it's just one thing for me, it's just one role. It's what I have to do to get these things out of my head and onto a piece of tape. None of us had any idea what to expect when we recorded Fuzzy. We just went in and recorded all these songs. The hardest thing in creating Fuzzy was choosing which songs were going to go on the album. We had a number of songs we've been playing for a while, and we were just trying to make the strongest album that we could. And none of us imagined that we would find ourselves in places like England, playing shows or anything like that. None of us had any idea what to expect. So it's all been a pleasant surprise. It just blew us away when we heard that Michael was listening to the record and that he really liked the record. I mean, it was really blowing us away that anybody really liked it. I mean, we liked it and all, but this was our first shot, and this was sort of our introduction to the world of making records and everything. I mean, we were always big music fans, and now we were on the other end. It was a whole other thing, and so when people like Michael Stipe kind of warmed up to our record, it just blew us away. We've kind of got to know him since that, and I mean, that's one of the greatest things that has developed from Michael hearing our record.
No, I think we were all really ready to make the new record and anxiously looking forward to the time that we could. After spending a year of touring for Fuzzy, it was the right time to go back in the studio, and the songs just sort of fell out of us and onto the tape machine.
We've always had just this enormous amount of faith in what we do. We've been working together for so long that there's something that fuels us, something that I can't put my finger on, but something that encourages us to walk out on the gangplank or something. So I don't know. I think it's been more the other case. We've really been reassuring those people that it's going to be okay. That we're just going to lock the door for a while, but when we come out of the studio, we're going to have something great. And I think that that kind of confidence has really delivered us in this situation, because everybody says that about the second record. They say it's so hard. It's always been hard for us, but it's always been something that we cared about and something that we put every bit of consideration into. It's always been important to us, and every record that we put our name will be will be important.
No, I think there's definitely a connection between the first album and the second album. I think songs like Fuzzy and Stars and Stripes, um, and some of the questions that were brought up on Fuzzy are continued over to Mighty Joe Moon. So yeah, I think it's definitely a logical progression from the Fuzzy album.
I think the second album was a lot easier. I think because we'd spent so much time together, because the three of us had sort of lived with each other, and slept next to or on top of each other, for a year or so out on the road. It brought us closer together. We had a lot of tough times. We were sort of thrown into a weird situation, sort of thrown into the same zoo, but we've emerged out of it a little bit stronger, and that made it a lot easier. There was a lot more trust and a lot more faith in one another in the making of Mighty Joe Moon than there was in Fuzzy. We were just more frantic when we were making Fuzzy. I mean, I think you can kind of hear it. I hear it when I listen to Fuzzy. I can feel it on the record, When I hear songs off that album, I'm transported to that moment when we were making the music. But I find that I've walked out of the studio with Mighty Joe Moon feeling completely satisfied. Satisfied, but with a lot of new ideas. I'm excited about making more music, but in the meantime, I really do feel like we've done the best that we could really do.
Hmm. It can be at times. I think the Mighty Joe Moon album was a lot easier to work on than the Fuzzy album was. There was a lot more trust in what I did and what I was capable of doing. It can be sometimes. Most of the time, it works pretty well, actually. Ideas seem to flow fairly quickly between the three of us, and we don't get into too many snags, really. So it's not that tough, really. I think the time that I would pass on producing Grantley Buffalo to somebody else would probably be the same time I would quit. Uh, they're pretty those things are pretty integral to me. My role in the band and what I do in the band is a lot of it. Probably 30% of it revolves around playing the bass, and 70% of it revolves around production. I don't know. It would depend on. There's a lot of people I'd like to produce. I'd love to produce an REM record, or I'd love to produce a Tom Waits record. I'd love to produce a Nick Cave record. There's a bunch of people that I could produce that I'd be happy producing. It just depends on what comes up and what comes along. And then I'm sure there's like a million new bands out there that are great that I've never heard of that someday I'll probably get a tape of.
We were real conscious about making a record that really had a flow to it, a record that was like a great film, something that was engaging enough that even if you were starving for popcorn or you didn't want to leave the film, you didn't want to walk out of the theater. That's the kind of album we wanted to make, and that's a difficult thing these days. Folks can program their own songs, they can program the whole album, they can resequence it on their CD players, and we haven't stopped them from doing that. You can still do that with a record like this, but we tried our best to make something that really was a complete work. And then again, an album that could be entered from any point. I think you'll find that any song you come to first will deliver you to the next place. That's just the kind of record we wanted to make. Something that was cohesive and focused, much more focused than the previous album, which was more a collection of songs that had been written over the course of a year or so. I tend to think in pictures. I tend to write in such a way that I describe the things that I see. I try to describe a feeling by painting a picture, and I paint that picture with words. It's not an easy thing to do. It's the only way that I know how to do it, though. I think films have had a big influence on my writing, though. As I look back, I remember being inspired by films like The Wizard of Oz as a kid, Films like Paris, Texas, There's a great soundtrack on that film as well. Films like In Cold Blood. I mean, these films probably contradict one another, but if you threw them all together and you threw in films like Brazil and Suddenly Last Summer and a whole lot of old black and white films that I watched at 2 in the morning when I was a kid, you probably have a good idea where I'm coming from, visually. Those things made a big impact. I'm real susceptible to visuals, The things I see stick with me. I like to write music for films. That intrigues me. I think I take to that pretty naturally. I've done a little bit of it for some friends that I have back at home, some filmmaker friends that I have. It always worked out pretty good. I like doing that kind of thing. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to sit around and I'd watch television with my guitar in my hand, and I'd sort of score my own films, It was things like Charlie's Angels, just like that kind of thing, A little guitar as Kate Jackson makes her way, toward the bandits. But, that's a glimpse of it. It's a little bit like that. Videos are a tough thing because they take your lyrics and they make them into something that's concrete. They attempt to remove the subjectivity of the songs. The way that you relate to a song is so important. You involve yourself in a song, It's about the cheapest form of virtual reality. You don't need your thumbs or anything like that, but you invest part of yourself, and whatever you've lived through, you apply it to the song. And a video has a way of stripping that away if it's not done right. It's a real tough thing. Mighty Joe Moon, the name was taken from a fellow named Joe Moon. He was hanging around the studio when we were making Fuzzy, and he was just this great guy. He drove diesel trucks most of his life, hauling all sorts of crazy things through the American Northwest. He'd haul logs, he'd haul toxic waste through the through the woods, and he had a lot of stories, and he had a lot of photos in his wallet. And late at night, he'd open up his wallet and he'd show us these photos of the various collisions that he'd been involved in, And I just thought he was the most amazing, intriguing person I'd ever met, He had this great sense of recklessness. And we started calling him Mighty Joe Moon. He sort of became our mascot or our hero while we were making Fuzzy. And I wrote a song that was sort of inspired by the name, I wasn't thinking of him so much in the song, but the name was certainly borrowed from Joe Moon. God, I think I wrote about 13 different songs about Mighty Joe Moon. I wrote a song called This Truck Is Going Down, and that was inspired by Mighty Joe Moon. Then there was another one that had more of a Celtic feel, and that was called Mighty Joe Moon, So I was hung up with this character, just this fella who was walking folklore. I think there's a lot of the band in that song. In the lyrics, though, there's a lot of a lot of recklessness, but there's also like this longing for some kind of peace of mind that exists somewhere else, you know, in the heart of the woods or something far removed from the life that we actually lead these days. I mean, it's certainly a fantasy.
And then I think also the song Mighty Joe Moon, if you could embody the three of us into one personality, I think it would be similar to the personality of Mighty Joe Moon. If you could sort of capture the spirit of a band in one person, that would probably be him.
Lady Godiva and Me is one of my favorites. It's just such a weird song, you know. I really like the pedal steel on it. It's a bizarre combination of instruments, and the lyrics are from somewhere else, you know. But my favorites, they change from week to week, you know. Sometimes I'm into that one a whole lot, and other times I'm really into the mood of sing along or something that's more violent or something, you know. My mood shifts, and the album makes way for that kind of mood shift.
I really like Sing Along is one of my favorites. It's just such a cacophonous mess of stuff going on. It's like modern times, and then the chorus is like this Baroque sort of song, and also Tecumseh, which is just me on this Doombeck that I play and Grant playing banjo, and the song's about a minute long, and it took about that long to record it.
On Mighty Joe Moon, I would have to say the song Mighty Joe Moon and the song Happiness. I think the song Happiness is probably my favorite song on the record.
Yeah, when you're making a record, you strive for making an album and making the thing work from the beginning to the end. And if you start thinking about something's a single, that's the wrong thing to think. I think that's best to let somebody else, you know, in like the record company decide that, or the marketing meeting. It's much more important for us to be able to listen to the CD as a whole body of work, and it work that way.
It's not real easy for us to select singles. I usually don't enjoy doing that, really. It's something that has to be done, you know. We put so much energy into creating an album that is diverse, an album that has variety, you know, but is cohesive, you know, and that's not an easy thing. So I would just hope that if the person who came to us through the single, I would hope that would bring them to the rest of the record, you know. That'd be the best thing. But I'd feel a little bit miserable, though, if I thought folks, you know, were summing us up by whatever our single was, because I don't think you're going to get the whole thing through our single. We try, you know. Like with Fuzzy, for instance, that distilled a lot of what we were doing into one song, but you still don't get it all. You still got to come to the album. I mean, we're kind of album band in a way. Mockingbirds was written about a day or so after the Los Angeles earthquake. The earthquake had came and left everything in shambles, you know. It knocked my house on its side. It destroyed our freeways, you know. It left people high and dry. And it sometimes takes something like an earthquake, something that you can't see coming, to remind you just what little control you have over some things. that there is a limit to the amount of control you can exert. Everything that I had planned, had been turned upside down when the earthquake hit. And so it reminds you of your size, and it's just a great metaphor, It's a real thing, but it's also a great metaphor. I guess some of these songs are like pages from a diary. I'm not always so aware how vulnerable the lyrics are. I mean, I try for that, but sometimes they're a lot more vulnerable than I realize, and I figure it out later when it's too late. When the songs are already out, then I know what I'm talking about. I mean, some of the things probably are so personal that maybe maybe other folks can't penetrate them as easily, but it's a strange thing to imagine, that other folks are really they really are sort of going through the songs like a diary. I can't really say if songwriting is a kind of therapy for me. I mean, there's a good chance that it is, but I just don't know enough about therapy, I guess. I know that if I didn't write songs and if I didn't play music, then I'd go nuts, So maybe there's something in that. I tend to sort things out in my songs, and I tend to evolve through my songs. Some of the songs are born out of empathy, though, I can't say that all these songs are completely autobiographical. They're often inspired by the people that I meet, the people that I come across, people that I read about, situations that I am aware of, all this kind of stuff. And it has a lot to do with just having my feelers out, just being vulnerable enough to empathize. Yeah, I think the stage is the very place where we release a lot of our frustration, and we also release a good deal of hope too. But it's a place where we really shoot for something that's real transcendent. We really try to bring ourselves to some kind of place that we just don't find when we're traveling, or when we're hanging out. It's not that kind of thing. It's so much more urgent than that. So yeah, I guess it is kind of cathartic. I don't know. It's something that I don't do a lot of thinking about, because it's that kind of state. It's a place where you go to become an animal. You don't go there to think about yourself.
It's surprising the amount of stuff that goes through your head when you're on stage, actually. But I think generally for me, for me personally, I have a great deal of aggravation sort of stored up in my body connected with the world at large. I'm fairly pissed off about a lot of things. So I think for me, that's a good place to go and throw things around and be sort of aggravated and sort of get your frustrations out in a sort of accepted manner. Playing live is a lot different than making a record. It's two different mediums completely to me, and we have no desire to sort of cross-collateralize those things or sacrifice one for the other. When you play live in front of an audience, the other part of that equation is the audience, and depending on how they react and what's going on in their minds, that has a lot to do with what happens during the show. But I think once we start touring on the Mighty Joe Moon record, it's going to be, once again, it'll be taken off in a different direction than what we have been doing touring on the Fuzzy record. We're going to introduce some different instrumentation live. We'll still do what we do. We'll still probably play Jupiter and Teardrop, and we'll probably still play Fuzzy and some of those other songs, and we'll probably still throw things around and be really crazy. But there's going to be another side to the set too, where we introduce different instrumentation and sort of try and stretch it in the Stars and Stripes, Mighty Joe Moon sort of direction too.
Oh, I think it's really important, and it's probably more than I even realized now that we've toured and toured. I've gotten to take it sort of. It's an essential vitamin that I need to have every day. If 9 o'clock rolls around and there's no show to do, I'll start like pacing around and warming my hands up and like getting ready, and that's not really good. Like if you're at home for too long, you start like knocking walls down in your house and stuff, and you got to get a good hobby then. But so I think the live thing is really essential because it's so different than the albums. You couldn't just have one existing without the other.
It's really important. That's your connection to people, other than sitting in a room somewhere with a microphone stuffed in front of an instrument. I mean, that's the recording process is a really isolated, introspective sort of a process, and playing live is completely the opposite. So yeah, it's the other side of the equation. I think that I always want to do the other one when I'm doing the other one. When we're in the studio, I always think, wow, I can't wait to get out and play live again. And when we're on the road, I think, oh, geez, I can't wait to record again. So it's sort of a vicious cycle.
It's always going to be a real important thing for this band to play live. I don't think I would ever wish to hole away in the studio for a long while. I mean, I miss the studio, and I always have this great backlog of songs that I intend to record. Some of them I record on my tape recorder at home, or some of them I sing into a Walkman or something like that. And that satisfies me for a while, but these are living things, these songs, They're not just relics. They're things that can be ignited at any time, Any time that we pick up our guitars and we launch into those songs, you have to approach it as though it was the first time. And that's the way that we do approach it.
Well, there's never really was too much of a before and after with France. It was just always, it just all of a sudden went rah, crazy. We did one show there in December of last year, and then we did a TV show, and then the next thing we heard, we were doing a tour of like 30 cities in France, and that happened in April of this year. And it's always, the crowds there have always been really enthusiastic. We played some shows that were about 300 people, 400 people in small clubs, and people were just mad. And then the other night we played to about 10,000 people, and they were equally as mad and just really, really passionate. I don't know what it is about the French, but it's not to just sort of pinpoint France, because we've had amazing shows in England and Norway and Italy, and even in America, we get people that are just really, really enthusiastic and come up to us and really, people will say, "God, you don't know how much this record has meant to me," or "God, Grant, these lyrics are something that I really can take to heart, and musically this is something," you know what I mean? And it may be from kids that are like starting to play music, and it may be from people that are artists or writers, or it may be from like businessmen or something that dig music as well. And so I think sort of throughout all walks of life, in terms of what people do professionally or artistically, there's a group of people that come to Grantley Buffalo's music and come to the shows. And so I don't really know that it's broken down in barriers by country. It's always a good adventure to travel the world and meet new people. And it's not so much the place or the cities that I enjoy as so much as meeting people and talking to people.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing dealing with the assumptions that are cast upon us. That's the most difficult thing. We need to be seen in our own context, and hopefully the more work that we put out there to be consumed and scrutinized, the more we'll be compared to ourselves, and seen in our own context. When Fuzzy came out, everybody tried to get a handle on it through comparing it to folks that had came out, in the past. And there was a great number of them that I had never even heard of, bands that I didn't even listen to or didn't have a plan to buy their record, So that's a kind of a weird thing. I just hope that we're seen for what we are. I'm not interested in comparing us to anybody else. I'm not really interested in where we fit in the history of rock, or whatever it is that we're doing. Hi, this is Grant from Grantley Buffalo, and this is our new single, Mockingbirds. Hi, this is Grant from Grantley Buffalo, and this is a track from our new album, Mighty Joe Moon. Hi, this is Grant from Grantley Buffalo. Keep listening for news of our tour. Hi, this is Grant from Grantley Buffalo, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year.
Hi, this is Joey from Grantley Buffalo, and this is our new single, Mockingbirds. Hi, this is Joey from Grantley Buffalo. Keep listening for music from our new album, Mighty Joe Moon. Hi, this is Joey from Grantley, Buffalo, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year.
Hi, this is Paul from Grantley, Buffalo, and this is a really crass announcement about our new single, Mockingbirds. Listen to it. Hi, this is Paul from Grantley, Buffalo. Keep listening for news of our tour, if you're interested, that is. Hi, this is Paul from Grantley, Buffalo, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year or whatever other religious holiday you celebrate at any time.